thank you for coming on the show. Pleasure to have you here. You are the first politician, believe it or not, we've ever had on this programme.
Have they all said no, or...?
They've all said... Well, you know what, you haven't asked. I've never really dabbled in that before. I've never really wanted them, and I thought, you know, it would be interesting to have you on, because I was quite excited by your selection as leader of the Conservative Party. It seemed to me it's like an interesting period in British politics. And also, more importantly, I read that you listened to my Radio 2 show, so I thought, you can't be a complete So I thought, not that I had thought beforehand, but I thought, well, this is a good reason of having... What should I call you? Should I call you the right on, David, Sir David, Dave, Cammy?
Dave, whatever you like.
Dave, what do your friends call you normally?
My wife calls me Dave, my mother calls me David. I don't really know, just whatever they like.
Just feel the mood, feel the mood.
Yeah.
Can I call you D to the AVE? Don't let's get on the lap now, I know you don't approve. All right. Now, what a day in your life that must have been, the day after you get elected, you get chosen to be the new leader, and then you ride in. Leaving your house that morning must have been just quite an unusual experience. It
was very weird, because you've got all these photographers and cameras and everything, and I got on my bicycle, set off, and suddenly realised there was this helicopter following me, and also there was a motorbike with another camera, and I normally go across a bridge which is only for cycles, so I stopped and said to the guy on the motorbike, look, you're not going to be able to follow me because I'm going over this bridge. And apparently on the commentary, the helicopter said, oh, look, he doesn't know his way to work. So you can't really win, but...
Well, you're under a sort of level of scrutiny that presumably you've never been under before, because let's face it, no one had heard of you, really, apart from the people who elected you in your own constituency. Yeah. You weren't, obviously, you weren't a high-profile kind of person.
That's right.
Do you normally wear the helmet? Did you take that off because they were following you, or was that... Why was that?
I try to wear the helmet, I don't always remember, but I always used to just take it off so the police officers recognise you on the door of the Commons.
And then let you in, presumably?
That's the idea.
Don't you need some kind of ID, though?
Yeah, you normally have a pass, but they recognise you. They're very clever.
But they shouldn't do that, because if this was like a thriller film, what if someone killed you, took your face off, stuck it on their face? I mean, God bless, touch wood, hope not. But you know what I mean? That kind of thing happens in movies. You get in, and next thing you know, Tony Blair turns around and he goes, hello, David. You go, not David. I am... You know what I'm saying? I am... Baron von Strunkel. And next thing you know, there's a fist fight, and you need me in a vest to come in and save you. So no, keep the ID with you.
Keep the ID on. And...
For Christ's sake, I'm telling you, well, you're new to the job, so OK. Now, is the Conservative Party changing as much as it seems to be to us at the outside? Are you bringing about the change you
It is changing. I think, I mean, as you saw in that clip, people voted for change, because I said, as running for leader, as you say, relatively unknown, I said I think we should make some big changes. We've got to recognise, you know, we've lost 3 elections in a row, Labour have been in for 8 years, they've done some good things we've got to recognise, they've done some bad things we want to change, but let's be the party for the future rather than try and turn the clock back. We've got to sort out having a better balance of men and women candidates, things like that. So I ran on a lot of changes, and people voted for change. Change is sometimes uncomfortable. I get a bit of criticism for it, but I think we're making some progress.
It's interesting to me for you to acknowledge that some of the things that Labour have done have been worthwhile, are good. You know, that seems to me a reasonably radical statement to make in today's...
It shouldn't be, because, I mean, we all go into politics for roughly the same reason, which is we want to do the best thing for the country and take the right decisions and make sure that we do well. And we're obviously going to agree some of the time. And when we do agree about the right steps, we should just work together and try and put them in place. And this is quite novel in a way, because the House of Commons is very much arranged around conflict and having a bit of a go at each other, which is important. You know, I have a big job to do to make sure that I call the Prime Minister to account, I ask the questions that people are worried about, I ask about his record on health or whatever. But when we do agree, you know, we should work together.
Okay. I was in there once. I was allowed into the House. The importance of the place, it's obviously steeped in that, and it must be kind of exciting. Do you get a buzz off it when you're in there and you know you're going to be in the thick of it? Is it kind of a...
Prime Minister's questions, because it's the event. It's like the circus. It's like, you know, people going to see Christians fed to the lions. You know, it's a big kind of weekly event. And that is quite a high sort of adrenaline moment, because everybody's there, the cameras are on, and one word out of place and you completely flop. And on the other hand, you know, you've got your chance to ask the Prime Minister the big questions of the day. So it's a huge honour, great privilege to do it. But it's quite, the first few times was very nerve-wracking.
I bet it was. When you got appointed, when you became the leader of the Conservative Party, who did you speak to first about it? Who within the party spoke to you? Are there people there who say, this is what you need to do, this is how we prepare you for leadership, or was it very much like you've got the job, just get on with it and do it your way?
Slightly. I mean, I'd got the job because I'd put myself forward for election, and we'd had this campaign all around the country, and made speeches and answered questions and gone on TV programmes and whatever. So you felt it was your job now to get on and do the things you had promised to do.
You spoke to, is it Dame Thatcher now? I think it's Dame Thatcher.
Lady Thatcher.
Lady Thatcher, I do apologise. She's gone up a step. It's like being upgraded on a plane, isn't it? Lady Thatcher, of course. Now, what did Lady Thatcher say to you?
She said, about Prime Minister's questions, she said, well, just get a good night's sleep and read all the newspapers and, eat properly, and, it's all sort of good advice.
Did she think you were her son or something? That sounds
it did sound a bit like
first
that.
day at school, make sure you're tucked in. If she spits on a hanky when you come out, you know you're in trouble. Now, what do you think were the best things that were achieved during her period, and what do you think are the things that maybe were either a mistake or didn't pan out the way that the party at the time would have hoped?
I think the best thing was she just gave back to Britain the chance of having a growing economy. She sorted out the trade unions and the inflation and all of that. And so the economy was growing again. So we had a chance to succeed. And we've been succeeding by and large ever since. The bad thing was it meant some very difficult decisions, whether that was particular decisions that affected particularly communities in the north of England and in Wales and Scotland where, there were difficult times, and there's no doubt about that. But they were, in the long term, they were the right decisions. And I think the way to prove that is the Labour Party, having won the election in 1997, haven't undone a lot of the things that she did. They kept the union laws because they know it was
I would have thought
important.
there were some of the companies that were privatised back then, and which I always found kind of odd and somewhat objectionable. I'll be honest, I thought that Labour would go back and try and...
But, who would renationalise British Airways or British Steel? Or, it would be crazy to go back.
But the various water companies at the moment that all of us are taking umbrage against, you would have thought that... And just the fact that companies like that are being held by outside control, countries outside of the United Kingdom now have a stake in these things, that doesn't seem to me to be particularly healthy.
I think we should be relaxed about, in the modern globalised world, about British people owning companies abroad and overseas people owning companies in Britain. The key is how they're regulated. I mean, the problem with the water companies is the regulation tough enough? Are they being made to do the things they ought to do in terms of mending the bus pipes? It's driving everyone mad. They've got a hosepipe ban, you can't water your garden, but on the other hand, there's water spurting out all over the streets.
There is. And what would you do about that?
Regulate. You've got to call these people in and have proper regulation. So,
can I tell you what I think people are scared of when they look at you and they look at the Conservative Party, and I may be wrong, but this is what would frighten me, is that I get the feeling you're a decent person, and I think you seem to hold on to these principles. One can never tell, of course, but I think you are. Obviously, there's a certain amount of vote getting involved in any politician these days. You want your party to be elected. But what would frighten me is that you get into power perhaps, and even if you believe these things, and that the rest of the party aren't necessarily along for the ride.
Well, the point I would make is that the Conservative Party, by voting for me, voted for change. They weren't voting for someone who changes their mind or someone who's suiting opinion. They voted for someone who said, look, this is important. We've got to be a party that addresses climate change and the environment, that recognises that for lots of family, childcare is the biggest issue in their lives. They voted for these things.
What's happening with London and this the new campaign for the mayor that you're talking about? It seems to me it's quite a radical new
We're trying to open up politics. In the past, parties have tended to sort of choose their candidate for a really important office like Mayor of London just amongst themselves. And so we've said, let's change that completely, let's open it up. And we put advertisements in the local papers and said anyone can apply to be the Conservative candidate for Mayor of London. And there's going to be a panel that's going to interview all the people who apply, and then we're going to maybe get down to 5 or 10 candidates, somewhere between 5 and 10, and then put it out to the vote. And everyone in London can vote, whether they're a member of the Labour Party or Conservative Party or Green Party or whatever, they can vote for who our candidate should be. So, Jonathan, I think we need someone who's well known to Londoners, popular figure, cares about the future of our country.
That's right.
What about it? Come on.
I would love to be the mayor, but I can't because I've just signed the biggest deal you could believe with the BBC. I can't take a step down in the money, I don't think.
It doesn't. You've got 1 year of that deal. That'll be enough for most. That'll be enough.
I've got 3 years. I've got longer than you'll have, probably. Clock's ticking. You've got to get moving if you want to stay in the job. Let me ask you about Tony Blair and the Labour government in particular here at the moment. Now, he made a difficult decision, and many people feel it was the wrong one, to go to war with the Americans against Iraq. Okay, there's a lot of people. There was an awful lot of opinion in this country that fought against that and decided that was the wrong thing. And even now today, I think it was probably his most unpopular decision. Faced with that decision, in his position, with the evidence that you believe he had at hand, would you have made the same decision? If not, what would you have done? And where do you think it leaves him now?
I think it was, I voted for, we had a vote in the House of Commons. I voted to go to war, and I voted to get rid of Saddam Hussein, and it was a very difficult decision. All of us in politics had to think about that, probably more than any other decision we thought about. I still think it was right. I still think Iraq now is better off without Saddam Hussein. They've got an elected government. That country's got a chance of democracy that we just take for granted in this country. But it's been incredibly difficult, and it's been very unpopular, no doubt about it. And some bad decisions were made after the war, no doubt about that. But there was no easy way to do this.
Is that for us to decide. Is that for us to get involved in? That's not our country. Sure, we have a vested interest in, for example, the oil that's produced there, and I can't help but think that might have been a tiny little factor in what went on.
Except for, Jonathan, I think the world has got...
Hold on, let's enjoy that. I never get one of those on a regular basis.
Well, there's no doubt it was... There's no doubt it is an unpopular war.
Yeah.
But the world has got smaller, and if you look at Saddam Hussein, he had invaded his neighbours, he'd gassed the Kurds, he'd fired missiles at Israel.
I think no one regrets that part
absolutely.
of the deal.
So the world's getting smaller, and we have to recognise that what happens in other countries has a big effect on us.
Now, bearing in mind that he took that decision, a difficult decision, and many people, I'm sure, here disagree, and I'm still not convinced it was the right one, but I accept the complexity of what goes on there, and I accept also that we don't always know all the information that you guys might be privy to. But having said that, that seems to have dealt a pretty fatal blow to him and to his party. And I can't help but think that you're going to reap the benefits of that. And here's something which you voted for as well. Now, this is a curious game that you're playing here that all politicians are involved in, to an extent.
I've been pretty frank about my own position on it, and I think that those of us who supported it should want to see it through and make sure we do the right thing for people in Iraq, who, as I say, at least have got a chance of a democratic future. I think the government suffered.
David, though, you would have done the same thing then. If you were in power at the time, you would have said, we have to go to war, regardless of public opinion.
I voted for it. I wasn't Prime Minister. I was a member of Parliament.
If you had been.
You can never, if questions are
well,
impossible,
but
David,
I'm asking you this because you're hoping to be.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're going to face decisions like that, and I think we want to know how you would react. Because what struck me as being remarkable was here was a man and here was a party, and this is, once again, this is the opinion I formed at the time, was they were flying in the face of what a lot of people in this country were saying they wanted. Now, regardless of whether you think that's the right thing to do, and I know you're in the position where you've been elected to run the country, but at the same time, there are big issues and there are big moments in any man's life and any man's career when he has to acknowledge the wishes of those who've put him there.
Absolutely, but what you're elected for is your judgment and to look at the evidence and to make your decision and go out and defend it. If you're Prime Minister and you think there's a real threat and if you think something has to be done, even if it's unpopular, you've got to go ahead and do it. And then you've got to face your electorate and you've got to explain why. And if they hoof you out of office, then you did what you thought was right. Yeah. And that's the only thing you can do in politics, is to do what you think is right, to defend your decision.
So you would have done it? You would have gone to war?
Well, that's what I voted for.
You know what people would like to see? You know how people would like to see the country, more or less? You ever seen the TV programme Heartbeat with Nick Lowe?
Yeah.
Now, if we could do with a few more multiracial faces in there, but apart from that...
It's a very happy sort of, you feel the whole place
would be a nice place to leave and and bring back the old policemen's helmets, wouldn't that be nice?
I saw your programme when you didn't like the new ones, did you?
I don't like the new ones. What's to like about the new ones? And never mind that, what about phone booths? I know we all got mobiles now, but you still need someone to stand and have a wee at night. Put the phone booth back. Have you ever read in a phone booth?
I haven't.
I'll tell you, it's an adventure. Right. One of the biggest issues facing all of us, but certainly facing anyone who hopes to achieve a position of power and influence, will be the drugs question. It's the big issue and the crime that the supply of hard drugs in this country brings with it, and that's never going to go away. Surely they should be legalised, shouldn't they? Surely that's the only way of regulating it and controlling it and getting some of the revenue back.
I don't think we should legalise drugs.
Well, why not?
Because you make them even more available. I think that much more emphasis on treatment.
There are criminals, and there are organised criminals with weapons who will use force to protect their industry. All right? That's not going to go away just by providing more care for those who are addicted. How do we stop that?
I'm not sure I do agree with. I'm not sure I agree with that.
They're still going to bring it in. They're still going to bring it in.
The question you've got to answer is, if you legalise it, it's going to be even more available, even more people getting onto drugs. Is that what you want?
David, anyone who wants drugs can get drugs. I'm telling you, it's a fact. It's everywhere now. It's permeating every level of society. So surely it's time for us to grow up and say, OK, this is something which a certain element of the population seek out and want and need, OK? And they're always going to find it. So let's make it legal so we can control it and we can keep on top of it and we can stop it from damaging other people's lives over and above those who are already affected by it.
It's an argument, but I don't buy it. Yeah, Think of the...
I haven't finished.
Right,
There's a bloke who's at the toilet. Come back, I need more applause. Sorry.
I don't know, I think of the mum who is trying to bring up their son or daughter the right way, who's trying to persuade them that taking drugs isn't a good idea, they're trying to make sure there aren't drugs at school and all of that, and if you legalise it, it just opens it up. And that is a reason for not doing it.
I can understand there is an argument.
But I would change drugs policy quite substantially by putting a much greater emphasis on treatment and a much greater emphasis on education. Those are the keys, rather than believing that, as you say, another sort of war on drugs is going to do it. I don't believe it will.
Yeah, well, it's not working, quite simply, is it?
So let's try something different. Education and treatment is a different approach.
That's right, let's legalise it.
No. It's quick.
Can I just point out, though, David, that isn't legally binding.
No.
A high five.
It wouldn't have looked good. It wouldn't have been good.
It's not legally binding, as far as I know. You ever give anyone the high five? Do you like to do the high
Yeah,
five?
my daughter loves
Give
doing
it a high
it.
five. It's legal.
No.
Hey, come on. David, really a pleasure meeting you. I wish you well. It's a very interesting time in British politics. I felt, and this is not a criticism of you or anything, but I've never felt like the left and right were closer together. It's kind of hard to tell you guys apart at the moment. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
If we agree with each other, we can sometimes get things done more quickly. That's a good thing. But we shouldn't hide where we disagree. And we disagree over lots of things, so I don't have to make it up.
Don't do that. It's too Blair.
Sorry.
That's too Blair. Get your own hand movements. Maybe some of that.
That
Maybe that. Avoid that. All right? David, a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Cameron, MP. We'll edit that down nicely. Thanks so much.